If the truth in foreign affairs was easily arrived at through common sense, we would not have strategists. Alliances of convenience are often temporary. They're also very common. It was, for example, very difficult for Franco to figure out whether he wanted to accommodate Chiang Kai shek in Taiwan, in particular because of the adversarial relations he had eventually conceded to a temporary reconciliation with the Chinese Communist Party fighting the fascists of Japan. De Gaulle tried to keep Algeria French and finally gave in to Algerian independence, and this led him to criticize America's involvement in Vietnam. The Vichy French, who were allies of Japan, were in Vietnam. So, how seriously we take our alliances depends on whether we see them as conveniences or alliances of substantial principle. So many people came to the defense of Gaza on principle that the question of whether or not alliances should be made exclusively on the basis of strength raises a attending question of whether the emphasis on strength is also a willingness to be perfidious. The idea that might makes right is sneaky. Very few people imagine that Reagan's firebrand moralism was the red carpet for Donald Trump. Probably studying Jack Ruby's Carousel Club and Batista's Cuba, Havana, where casinos and mafia prostitution were well known, should have given some insight into Frank Sinatra's hold on Las Vegas. And we see the Ukrainian girls of media showing up in America and going to Las Vegas, which isn't in any way to subordinate their legitimacy as human beings to the invading army from Russia, who exploit the idea that NATO fascism was turning the Ukraine into a proto-fascist corruption to justify their invasion. Their invasion has been terrible, and it's very sad for all concerned. Was it part and parcel of what Netanyahu pulled against Gaza with the help of Hamas? Under Bush, we saw the arming and the death squads of extremists of the sort that can only be found in the horrible traumas of catastrophic invasion. We saw the criminal insanity just burgeon. And we lament when terrorism comes knocking at our own doors. But who were the heroes when David Bowie made his alliance of convenience with Ronald Reagan in the 80s and 90s that eventually gave rise to Clinton and Victoria Nuland? And of course, the insane picture that has been painted by Carbonell's laboratories with Brian Eno, working the carrot tape that gave rise to the claim as Operation Medicine Man. Cathartic, symbolic, timeless scream, symbolism that led all the way to Seattle, where members of the Green Party in Seattle have staked out with Netanyahu and Yoko Ono an absurd theater station representing the cosmonaut overlooking the supernova. Berlin Beer Hall at Tacoma Dome in the direction of the Magic Mountain, and a flash card. Anyone who knows the mythology around Hiroshima, the Hiroshima Dome, the sacred mountain of Japan, the question of whether or not we could have demonstrated the atomic bomb, understands the ludicrous, criminal postulates of the semiotic farce that get ordained as illumination because of the bizarre mind of Sean Lennon and his gang of, what do you dare call them? Islamo-fascists like Yusuf Endur, terrorizing me with the help Will Zellbrome, a white Nazi from the Green Party. Invading privacy in the name of moralism to promote a ghastly crime of state. Obviously, there's a lot that's not being properly considered. And when I say that if common sense could easily sort out the alliances and the doings of foreign policy, there wouldn't be strategists. I also am showing you the nature of the strategy, known as sandbaggers and sandbaggerla. They worked with the Neva Pornographic Corporation and Yoko Ono, promoting a switchboard of tall tales, none of which passed muster, but all of which got media attention. And they said, wouldn't this make a tear-jerking TV show if it was so and happened this way? Wouldn't this make an indignant right-wing feminist cause celebrate if it went this way and if it was so? And they used a dishonorable cut and paste technique and manufactured with the help of Martin Scorsese. Wrangling over the enemy within brought us full circle to a neuroplastic implant by a neuropsychiatrist named Wattenmaker. This sort of deranged laugh in the dark, as a ride that used to exist at Kennywood Amusement Park was called, characterizes the corpus of shenanigans brought upon us by the prog rockers, whose Slipknot kept Gail Burstyn at large and built momentum for the tyranny that fell upon Gaza. But they tell the story very differently. They tell the story of the wayward girls who fell for the queerball's charms because he was imitating John Lennon and strutting his magic as a poet. They don't talk about the contracts that were made with girls to sexually abuse the victim of traumatizing, slaughtering head blows. Doesn't make them the avengers of Lenin. They make themselves out to be, which is a song and dance that I have gone into elsewhere. The accusation they claim is an existential dilemma because the Lord sees the consequence of being targeted with successive degradations of the X motive in the make pretend, little white liar who symbolizes the catastrophic bomb that ended World War II. In a sick, sick society that just wants to fight and never make peace. It's very sad because we spent our money badly. It caused us debts that are haunting us. It abused the temperament of the earth's temperate zones. It killed the poor bees. It sent the poor grandmothers packing. COVID was uncalled for, but it was the sort of thing we've come to expect. 2 years into Trump's first term, 2 years into Biden's first term, we get hit by a gaggle of surprises unlooked for. Prices go up. Self-esteem goes down. Our fear of the nattering natives, nattering nabobs of neighborliness, spinning homespun gossip gets ever more aggravating and sad and scary to analyze. The whole point of what I'm saying is the common sense. If it were so easy to understand foreign policy, would teach us to get along. The strategists always seem to have an argument against the personality of our attempts to reform our society to make it realism to get along. Realism in getting along that cast aside as imaginary, naivete, the dream world. And where do these spinner beanies of magical thinking lead us? But to the unfolding of a Holocaust. Shame on anyone who thinks that that means they're in touch with what they believe is the nature of reality. It's estrangement from reality, and we all know better. We all know that the inspiring words of the librarian in Tacoma mean much more on the grassroots level and in an international place in terms of the scheme of things than the bizarre finaglings of the administration on high. We all know that. God help us that we can't stand for something. There was a man named Bruce Lee who believed that might could be broken by morality, and so they killed him. People have to learn the art of outcasting. International law doesn't depend on a police force. It depends on the reputation of those who have been identified as breaking the law. We should learn to outcast those who believe that might makes right. Let them lead their lonely lives without influencing us.